Well, good morning. Welcome. I get the privilege this morning of introducing our speaker, and I also get the privilege of not having to speak today. This is usually my day that I get to speak, but I am very excited to have our friend Sandy McKeown here with us today. Last year, for Mother's Day, we gave every mother a book that she had read, and I pray that in the last year you had time to read that book because she really is just so gifted and so full of wisdom and so down to earth that I just know that you are going to be blessed this morning and you will walk away feeling refreshed. Even all of you non-moms out there, even you dads, everybody's going to walk away. I've known Sandy for a very long time, and one of the things that Sandy did for me that I'll forever be thankful for, when Josh and I were going to get married, Sandy, she used to be the wedding coordinator. She was like the wedding coordinator of all wedding coordinators, but she had retired from the job. And when I got engaged to Josh, I asked her to step in and help me coordinate my wedding, which doesn't sound like much, except for when you are planning a wedding without a mom. And I had Sandy, and she walked me through it, and she helped me every step of the way. So I will forever be thankful for my beautiful friend Sandy. And I know she's got a lot of friends out here that came to see her and hug her as well. So sorry, I probably made you cry too. But anyway, let's give her a round of applause for Sandy.
I raised 5. I developed quite the lungs, I think. Did you hear most of that? Okay, good. I will not go back. I told Josh it'd be about 25, 30 minutes, so, quick on Mother's Day, right? Anyway, thank you, moms, for everything you do. And I know a lot of you moms, and I just want to say, you're rocking it. You're really good at this, and you guys are examples to me many times. So thank you for all that you do, moms. I have an essay I want to read to you this morning. Most of you younger ones are not going to be familiar with this author, but I just loved this. I've loved this piece forever. She's been dead about almost 30 years now, but the older generation, my generation older, will recognize the name Irma Bombeck. And the name of this is When God Created Mothers. When the good Lord was creating mothers, he was into his 6th day of overtime when the angel appeared and said, "You're doing a lot of fiddling around on this one." And God said, "Have you read the specs on this order? She has to be completely washable, but not plastic. Have 180 movable parts, all replaceable. Run on black coffee and leftovers. Have a lap that disappears when she stands up. A kiss that can cure anything from a broken leg to a disappointed love affair. And 6 pairs of hands." The angel shook her head slowly and said, "6 pairs of hands? No way." "It's not the hands that are causing me problems," God remarked. "It's the 3 pairs of eyes that mothers have to have." "That's on the standard model?" asked the angel. God nodded. "1 pair that sees through closed doors when she asks, 'What are you kids doing in there?' when she already knows. Another here in the back of her head that sees what she shouldn't, but what she needs to know. And of course, the ones here in front that can look at a child when he goofs up and says, "I understand and I love you," without so much as uttering a word. "God," said the angel, touching his sleeve gently, "get some rest tomorrow." "I can't," said God. "I'm so close to creating something so close to myself. Already I have one who heals herself when she is sick, can feed a family of 6 on 1 pound of hamburger, and can get a 9-year-old to stand under a shower." The angel circled the model of the mother very slowly. "It's too soft," she said. "But tough," said God excitedly. "You can imagine what this mother can do or endure." "Can it think?" "Not only can it think, but it can reason and compromise," said the Creator. Finally, the angel bent over and ran her finger across the cheek. "There's a leak," she pronounced. "I told you that you were trying to put in too much into this model." "It's not a leak," said the Lord. "It's a tear." "What's it for?" "It's for joy, sadness, disappointment, pain, loneliness, and pride." "You're a genius," said the angel. Somberly, God said, "I didn't put it there." We are complicated creatures, we moms. It's the way God built us. Often tough as nails, tender and sweet sometimes. We have what seems like multiple hands and multiple sets of eyes because there's a lot going on under our roofs. It's pretty amazing how God made us. But I know life as a mom is not always easy. I have a sister that told me recently, she said, "I have been tested for patience and it came back negative." Unfortunately, I have the same gene she does. While raising kids, there were days. A few decades ago, I had been up all night and I looked at our autistic child was not sleeping through the night. And I had been up most of the night with him. I was wearing this purple flannel nightgown that my mother had given me. The first time I came downstairs wearing it, my husband looked over his newspaper, looked at me and said, "Didn't we camp in that last year?" He had a subtle way of getting his message across, yes. So I'm wearing this purple flannel nightgown. My hair hasn't been close to a comb for 24 hours. I've been up most of the night. My autistic son is still wearing diapers because he's refusing to get trained, and he has a diaper rash. So I've taken his diaper off, and I'm trying to keep a bleary eye on him as he's walking around the living room and dining area. And my two oldest kids got up for school, all on their own, such responsible kids. And I was listening with my ears to make sure they were on track for what they were supposed to be doing to get ready for school. And I heard a sound that didn't sound right. So I go into the kitchen and I discovered that my 4th grade son was making a honey and butter sandwich for his school lunch. The fact that it was not nutritious did not even register in the moment, because there was honey and butter strewn all across the kitchen counters, all across the wood floor, and over to the nook on the table in my kitchen. I walked over to the table and picked up the offending utensil he'd used, a butter knife. And there was so much butter and honey on this thing, I couldn't tell which end was the handle and which end was the blade. I looked at it and discussed, just tossed it back onto the table. Well, with the state of the knife and the angle of the toss, it skipped once and sailed out the window. My ever-growing mess in my kitchen expanding. And right at that time, as I was turning away from the broken window, my brain kicked in. Warning, warning, you have left a diaperless child unattended. I rushed back to discover he had made a rather large deposit on our carpeted stairs. And it was just at this moment my husband was arriving home from work. He was a train conductor and had been gone for 3 days. And he was coming around the side of the house and was stopped by his neighbor who had a crew of men building a deck that morning. They had heard all the yelling. They had seen the knife flying out the kitchen window. And the neighbor said, "You don't want to go in there." My husband said, he mumbled something about, "I feel kind of obligated." And he walked in. And I didn't know where most of my kids were prior to their dad walking in the door. They all showed up, grasping his legs. "Daddy, Daddy!" They needed saving from this wild, overtired, exhausted woman. Yes. My husband looked at me and he said, "Why don't you go to bed?" I said, "You've been up all night too." And he said, "You look like you need it worse than I do." With purple flannel flying, I ran upstairs and went to bed, and my head hit the pillow and I was out for 4 hours. I woke up and it was quiet downstairs. That worried me. I ran downstairs, went to the kitchen. The counters, the floor, the table were spotless. The window temporarily taped shut. On further investigation, I found my husband sitting in the den in the most uncomfortable chair we had. He was struggling to stay awake. The two oldest he'd gotten off to school. The two youngest were playing quietly beside him, the youngest in a diaper. And I said, "Tag, it's your turn." And he went off to bed. Life doesn't look like the fairy tales. The real life doesn't. I want you to know, I see you. I know you're tired, moms. I know you're weary. I know you've been through a lot. And God sees you too. And when you cry, he weeps with you. Some days, those hard days keep coming seemingly on repeat. And I think that they're even more painful when we watch our loved ones being affected by those hard things in life. Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a response in such a moment. John 2, 1 through 11. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Mary went to Jesus and said, "They have no more wine." Mary recognized the needs of the hosts. They were out of wine. There could have been several reasons why they were out of wine, but hear this. Mary didn't focus on the reason. She focused on the resolution, and she went to her Redeemer to get results. I'll say that one more time. Mary didn't focus on the reason. She focused on the resolution, and she went to her Redeemer to get results. He was the one who could do something about it. She understood that. But how did she know? Mary knew what Jesus could do because she'd seen him in action before. Jesus lived under her roof. She lived with him while he was a child. She knew what he could do. Perhaps one day Mary was preparing dinner over an open fire, and the pot started to slip. And to save the contents, she instinctively grabbed it to write it back on, but now her hand was burned. But the Son of Man was there. Did he come over and touch her hand and heal her? I think things like that happened. But now she knew. He healed. Did she, after she was a poor carpenter's widow, go to the pantry one day planning on making something to eat for a meal? And she went there and she realized there just wasn't enough there? Did she turn and circle through the room with a little bit of panic, wondering what was she going to do, and turn back, and now there was just enough there to make the meal? Now she knew he healed, or he performed miracles. Mary learned these things under her own roof. I believe things like this happened, and Mary experienced miracles inside her own modest home. This is evident by her actions at the wedding in Cana. But did you notice? Initially, Jesus had no intention of performing a miracle at this place and time. He had bigger things in mind. He said, "It's not my time." He said he didn't want people to know that he could perform miracles yet. But he relented. Why? I'm no scholar, but I think he did it because a person who had a close relationship with him asked. At the start, Jesus didn't agree with Mary's plea. He had other things in mind. He didn't want people knowing that he could perform miracles. But Mary pursued it. She was bold. She was confident because she was doing it for people she loved. Why pursue a miracle? What's all the fuss? What's the big deal about wine at a wedding, right? Nowadays at a Christian wedding, wine is seldom served. You could easily be saying, what's the point? The point is, it's not about the wine. It's about Mary's example of interceding. Because of her actions, what happened that day was different than it would have been. This is exciting. We can pursue miracles for our loved ones. If we intercede for our own kids, our own loved ones, is it possible that lives could be changed? I believe so. Of course, some people don't believe miracles still happen, just as I'm sure some of the guests at the wedding didn't believe a miracle occurred. Put yourself for a moment at the wedding in Cana. Someone probably leaned over to another. Did you hear? The ceremonial water was turned into wine, and it's the best wine ever, so they say. Apparently, Mary's son Jesus had a hand in it. It would be hard to believe. So another guest would probably lean in to talk to another guest. What have you heard? Isn't that what we do? We don't understand what's happening, so we try to make sense of things by taking the finger in the wind litmus test. We ask others what they believe before we put some roots into our own beliefs. The older guests would probably be saying, "You don't bring out the best wine last. That's not how we do things. That's not how we did them when we were young." But as they get focused on how that's not how it should be done, they totally miss the miracle altogether. But regardless of the age of the guests, I'm sure it would be hard to grasp. A miracle? This neighbor kid that played with our kids, he was a little odd. We all knew that. But how could he turn water into wine? It just doesn't make sense. There's got to be another explanation. But they didn't see. The ones who saw some of what happened were the servants, the ones that filled the jars, because work and obedience was required. Jesus didn't stand and clink cups with Simon Peter at the wedding, asking for everybody's attention, and then make a big, bold demonstration of creating a miracle. No, he had a quiet, humble approach. He didn't blink his eyes and the water turned to wine. No, there were other human hands that were involved in this process. Mary turned to the servants and told them to do whatever he tells you. She knew action was needed. I don't believe she knew what action would be required, but she knew, I believe, from previous experience in her own home, that something would be required to get this miracle ball rolling. And a miracle happened. Let's ask the question, what if Mary hadn't been at the wedding? What if a neighbor had gotten sick and she went there to help instead of attend the wedding? It sounds plausible, right? But then, who would have pursued the miracle? Who had a close enough relationship with him at the time to press for a miracle? There was no other. It was this mom. She was the one that saw the need. She was the one who knew that Jesus performed miracles. She was the one who had a close enough relationship and could press him, pleading for action on behalf of her loved ones. What does this mean for you? First, you have the power within you to pursue a miracle. Miracles can be experienced inside your home too. Mary is such an example to us on how to hone in and focus on what needs to be done for our loved ones that are experiencing difficulties. We need to follow her example and take note. This is not I'm sorry I haven't prayed for over a year, but could you get this miracle done, please? I don't think it works like that. I really believe we need a fundamental relationship with our Lord that is required and part of this process. Mary knew what Jesus could do. This gave her the faith to move forward. Do you have enough faith? Certainly, health problems, financial woes, rocky family relationships, and stress were a part of Mary's life, just as they are a part of ours. Hers just looked different. And I'm sure she prayed about them. The problems were different in her times, but they still existed. And I know many of you moms have had a lot of problems too. Some of you have been wounded. It's been a rough couple of years through lockdown. Here in the Midwest, we're raised to be tough, to suffer without yielding, to take life as it comes, even when it comes at you hard and fast. But we have the power to pray for a miracle. We don't have to stay in the mess. Number 2, you can change the trajectory of your children's lives. In between the prayer and the pain is, in between the prayer and the promise is pain, a spirit of heaviness, frustration, fear, crisis fatigue. Author John Elridge writes, "The story of your life is the story of the long and brutal assault of your heart by the one who knows what you could be and fears it." But here's the thing. He knows what your kids could be and fears it. We have to fight for our kids. Don't quit. Keep moving. Giving up is not an option. I know that most of you know that my husband and I raised 5 kids, 3 with special challenges, ADD and a mood disorder, epilepsy, reading disability, depression, oppositional defiance, and autism. I tell you these things not so that you feel sorry for me. I want you to know these things because all 5 of our kids are leading productive lives in society. All 5 of my kids went to college. These are miracles that happened under our roof. But God did it. And I'm so thankful that He taught my husband and I how to pursue those miracles. You and I are living at least one of the prayers we used to pray. This is great news. If you've been praying for your kids, they are living in a prayer that you used to pray as well. If you're currently facing a problem with your kids, hear me on this. The event or the problem really isn't the problem. Our response to the problem is often the problem. Something I've repeated to myself while dealing with my kids. And I've said this over and over again. So take this with the grain of salt that it's supposed to be taken. Flesh and blood are not my enemy. Flesh and blood are not my enemy. Flesh and blood are not my enemy. Because our response to the problem is often the problem. Are you ready to fight for your flesh and blood? I'm so thankful our Lord taught us to pray and to not give up. Number 3, prayerfully fight for your kids. in your home for your kids, who is the one pressing for a miracle? My challenge for you today is not to let sluggishness and despair hamper your prayers for your kids. All of us, moms, dads, grandparents, extended family, need to learn to keep the fire burning in our hearts despite the dreary duties we all face day to day that threaten to smother our burning hearts. The secret to keep that burning is to abide in Jesus. Oswald Chambers writes, when we truly live in the secret place, it becomes impossible for us to doubt God. We become more sure of him than of anyone or anything else. This is the confidence we need. Then we can pursue miracles for our loved ones. Be that mom. Go boldly. Be that dad that prays confidently. Be that grandparent that fights for your loved ones. Be the one that stands up and does something that changes lives. I challenge you. Prayerfully fight for the people you love.